Welcome everybody, continuing once again this exploration we started since the beginning of the year. This is episode 34 of exploring the Illuminati occult, drugs and secret societies. This is a very interesting subject, a very controversial one for sure. Behind us we have volume 7, by the way, who is our #1 bestseller of all times. But, you know, of course, we have also volume 9. And actually, I want to show today to our viewers some photos sent by our viewers with volume 9. Because, guys, if you want, actually, you should always leave a great review for volume 9. And plus, you should also send us a pic at ordoilluminatorum@gmail.com, which is our address. You can find also at my website, and it's usually indicated also in the description of these videos. So what happens here? We have our viewers who send in photos, but of course, a very special viewer is my mother, who was the first one to purchase volume 9. So here we go with, this is directly from the Zagami family headquarters. And welcome everybody around the world following the Leo Zagami show. See, here we have volume 9.
Your mother has no pictures in the...
That is me. Thing. Watch me as a kid.
Oh my gosh, you look like Danny from Shining.
And then that's when I was doing my first communion.
You don't look very happy.
And that's when I look happy, though.
That one you do.
Yeah. And then that was my father with my grandmother. Oh. And that was my father with my mother.
Oh, beautiful.
In Seoul, in London. And here I have a great-great-grandmother.
But who's in that faded pic? That's really
creepy. Great. And more the great, and the more they fade. But aside from that, we have also pics sent from other individuals who maybe follow my broadcast even in the Italian language. Check this out. Of course, volume 9 is my latest book. It can actually be read by people who have never read a Leo Zagami book, so it's an advantage. And like I said, we find it quite joyful to not only invite our viewers and readers to review this book, but also to send these pics, because each pic becomes in itself an artwork.
That was Tony's pic. That was my son's pic.
Yeah, I'm about to show it. Here it is. This is...
yeah, it's Tony's pic.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. Well, here we have, of course, another family pic. And then we have, because otherwise it's going to be only family pics. But then we have people who basically seem to put the book in a context which is kind of
what?
I don't know. Let's see. This is of course volume 9, and here we have it. I don't know. There's some kind of food next to it. It seems like somebody's on the move.
That's some. What is that? What is that? No, don't pay attention to that.
Okay. But then we have some more interesting ones. For example, here directly from, let's say, a Zagami library almost of sorts, with, I guess, a few of my books. Let's check out here. What kind of books we have here? Well, we have, of course, we have also Alex Jones with his... Great Reset. We have Leo Zagami with volume 8. We have Michael Tellinger. We have also my books here. So thank you for this photo. And like I said, today we are opening the show by showing some of the pics that are sent to us. And I must say that it's a great initiative that we have started a long time ago with previous books, and it seems like people are enjoying this. Here we have this incredible photo with God, Good, gun, and here is volume 9. Great.
God and guns and
well,
America.
in America, definitely. And let's see. Here we have last pick I want to show you for today. Otherwise, I will be probably boring you. And we are about to start one of the most interesting shows of all our series. It's Drugs and Secret Societies, Drugs and Illuminati. So purchase your copy of volume 9 and send, of course, your photo. I'm going to actually probably put on the screen the email so then people can...
That's very hard to spell when you say it.
Yes, so maybe it takes a little bit of... because it's Latin. So here we have it. Let me
Ordo Illumitorum Universalis.
Universalis. Here it is. I'm going to put it on the screen so then everybody can send their own pic at this address. See this address here. And on top of that, we want to thank our sponsors, Christine.
Okay, so Howard S. and Bruce, thank you very much for your donation.
Bruce Codish and Howard S. Yes, this is also another very important thing. If you want to join the sponsorship, you can do it in two forms. You can do it anonymously, like some people have decided, and then you can do it publicly. Now, if you want to donate, we have the GoFundMe modality, and we have the Cash App modality for our English-speaking crowd. This seems to be also very used, especially if you live in Great Britain or in the United States. But if you live in continental Europe, probably you should use instead GoFundMe. Here we have it on the screen now. And let's start, of course, with our dance macabre. Ready?
Yes.
Somebody is sending a lot of people here in the chat saying hello, also from Staten Island. Love Staten Island. Really, they are fighting against this crazy mayor and the insane policies in New York City. Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show, Leo and Christy Zagami.
Hi everyone, I had jury duty this week. Last week I had jury duty.
And yesterday we received a bunch of Italian fans of our show in a place called the Spaghetti Western, which is a restaurant of a friend of mine, Italian friend of mine, who mixes two styles, but he actually does a great job with this place, which is very picturesque. Can we describe it in that way, Christy?
Yes.
In Morongo Valley. And I think I have actually a video that I can show. Of course, this was all the usual Italian making a lot of noise. So we're going to probably show you only the images of this incredible place where we met with some supporters of the Leo Zagami show, which is actually followed by a lot of Italo-Americans also. So here they are in this...
You can see the background. It's really cool.
Yes, it's definitely a very, very cool place.
You can see up there, isn't that?
Yeah.
That's really
and
cool.
Actually, this place, during the Prohibition, Al Capone used to hang out in this place in Morongo Valley.
And when did they say there's some blood around
Well, there
there
is a bullet, actually. Yes, there is a bullet in one of the walls that was shot by Al Capone. So it's...
So if you're ever in Morongo Valley, visit Spaghetti Western and have a great meal and a great time with great friends.
Yes.
Like a commercial.
No, but we don't get paid.
You're welcome, Lorenzo.
Yeah, no, they don't pay us. They're just friends from Rome. And of course, we would like to promote this thing they did, which they started a year ago, by the way. Their own, their own restaurant based in this place, which of course was pre-existing, but now it's living a new life. So here we are with Exploring the Illuminati Occult, Part 34, Drugs and Secret Societies. And when it comes to drugs and secret societies, there will be people who say, but the Illuminati, drugs, whatever, this doesn't sound proper, it doesn't sound realistic. Instead, it doesn't only sound realistic, it's totally realistic, and you will basically be astonished. There was a secret society, which in particular we will be talking about, once again, the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor. We will be talking again about somebody like Pascal Beverly Randolph, if you remember, the founder of the first Rosicrucian Society here in America. But first of all, let me introduce the subject, because numerous artists, political leaders, and wealthy individuals in the present-day society make use, of course, of alcoholic drinks and drugs, and intensively publicize the whole thing like it's normal. They are trying to normalize this attitude of a social use of drugs that in old times was mainly initiatic. It was restricted to those mystery schools that made use of it, and secret Illuminati priesthoods that dealt with these drugs because they facilitated contact with the invisible world, with the other side, with entities, with intermediaries between them and God, or maybe even worse, between them and Satan most of the times. Now, in the Jewish and Christian Bible, Proverbs 23, 31, 32 says, "Do not look at wine when it is red. He puts his eye on the cup, it goes smoothly. Ultimately, it will bite like a serpent and sting like a viper." So it's quite normal, but it's not harmless. Drugs and alcoholic drinks can destroy your body and soul while annihilating common sense and discernment. So today, of course, we need to discuss this subject in a very detailed way, with a lot of responsibility also on us, in a way to responsibly talk about alcohol and drugs in secret societies. I will take off the alcohol because it's not interested. It's not the subject that pertains for today. So let's avoid talking about the alcohol, because also it's a subject a bit more complex. But when it comes to the drugs, remember that this inwards expansion of consciousness happened especially when, after the Age of Reason, there was a momentum during the 19th century against what was becoming obvious with Darwinism and brutal industrialism. There was a reaction to all that. And of course, there was also a revival of the occult, but we were basically seeing something new. We were seeing people getting together in clubs, intellectuals, especially in Paris. There was a place where hashish was initially the drug of choice, but then you had other drugs that came in afterwards. But first of all, when did the Illuminati start using drugs? Probably, guys, already in ancient Egypt, probably already in other also cultures. For example, the Mesoamerican culture also has this important the hallucinogenic drugs in all the pre-Columbian Mesoamerican cultures is definitely present, and still to this day we see that this shamanism that comes from those areas makes use. We saw it with peyote, and now, of course, also with the rise of ayahuasca. But today we are talking about the Illuminati, the real Illuminati. So during the 1840s, there was a place that my father introduced me to, because my father wrote a book, it's called Fumastre, dedicated to the initiatic use of hashish, so of ash. And he went to Paris to conduct with his friends some very detailed studies, apart from meeting with then Brian Geisen, amongst other things. But there was this Hotel de la Zone, that was known as the Hotel Pimodan, and today this place is actually a institute, a very specific and particular institute, the Institut d'études avancées de Paris, which means the Institute for Advanced Studies based in Paris. It's a very beautiful place to get stoned, guys, and a lot of very powerful and famous intellectuals and Illuminati used to go to this building. So let's go and check where the Illuminati in Paris started to gather for their drug experiments. Like I said, this was not the, kind of places. I mean, imagine stoned watching this kind of ceilings and beautiful building. The building was definitely beautiful, and there was artists and writers like Joseph Ferdinand Boussin de Busner, Théophile Gautier, Charles Baudelaire. Charles Baudelaire, especially, a very known name. And as you can see here in this site, they say, during the stay in the 1840s, the saloon of the Hotel Lazun, then known as the Hotel Pimodan, were regularly devoted to the very private parties of the Assassins clubs. Assassins, also based on the assassins that were supposedly a sect of Ismaili Muslims that in their initiatory rites made the people who became assassins smoke their ashes with the promise of course, meeting I don't know how many virgins in paradise, and then, of course, they will go on suicide missions or impossible missions, strengthened by their initiation and by the fact that they have tasted in some way, they had inhalated paradise for a moment, because they will experience these artificial paradises. But, of course, in this case, it was the intelligentsia, the intellectual elite of Paris that started to consume a lot of hashish initially, then they consumed laudanum, and then they started to consume opium. Of course, with the aim to ascend, but then there was a secret society that was much more further on, dealing directly with the invisible masters and the entities. That is a different kind of secret society. That is a secret society that inspired Madame Blavatsky and Theosophy. That is a secret society we mentioned in the past. There is only a book that talks about this secret society. I'm talking about the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor.
I heard about them from you.
Of course, the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, inspired, like I said, partly Theosophy, came before it was, established before the Golden Dawn, and it became a very influential society because also it was practicing both sexual magic, but also it was doing this initiation in which you were taken in and given a pill of concentrated hashish during the initiation, and then you get in contact with something. So before getting there, we can go, let's make a step even further back. Let's go to John Dee. Let's go to the Renaissance. Let's go to the initial place where we're going to meet the first grimoires that talk about the initiatory use of certain drugs. I mean, we have, of course, talked about the hashish and the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, which is a topic I want to talk further after, because it's a very important topic, especially in the way they connected with certain entities. But another very important, of course, we're going back, cannabis culture, because you see, the first drug definitely that was embraced by the Illuminati was cannabis. And there is a reason for that. At least two 16th century grimoires that were in use in England at the time of Dr. John Dee, Dr. John Dee with Edward Kelly. Edward Kelly Crowley claimed to be the reincarnation of him. Edward Kelly was his medium. John Dee was interrogating him, and he devised what is known as the Enochian alphabet and language to talk with these angels. Okay, now Dr. John Dee prescribed cannabis, and I didn't smoke cannabis yet today, for mirror scrying and to see spirits.
What now? What he
John
smokes
Dee,
the cannabis?
He prescribed cannabis for mirror scrying when you
shouldn't do that. It's very bad to do that.
I mean, of course, but I mean, we're talking about the Illuminati here. So John Dee, the guy who signed himself 007 to Queen Elizabeth, so the guy who invented the terminology 007, he was the secret agent to the Queen. He used cannabis for mirror scrying, and that means scrying means the future, no? In the future, and to see spirits. There was various grimoires at that time in circulation: the Sefer Raziel Liber Salomonis, the Book of Magic, and that is being recently re-released with the name the Book of Oberon. Now, the Book of Oberon is a pretty interesting book, and like I said, it talks about the initiatic use, and we are talking about centuries ago. This was a source book of Elizabethan magic, and is a fascinating book that includes ritual for summoning a long list of spirits and fairies, including Oberion, Fairy King, and in close relation to Shakespeare's Oberion. There is, of course, instructions for dealing with goetic demons that were censored in other texts. One of the oldest known copies of this magical grimoire also contained the Enchiridion, which is another manual in itself. So it is definitely interesting to see that cannabis appears already back then in what is the initiatic use of drugs, and those drugs will then be vehicled, of course, within the world of secret societies and mystery schools more and more. So the way they consume cannabis at times was different from how we consume it today. Pascal Beverly Randolph was even selling it, by the way. So here,
he was a dealer?
No, but he sell this portion made out of it. You know, people were making portions at that time. They came out in the end also with a portion with cocaine, which became Coca-Cola. So, I mean, it was kind of like people were, of course, experimenting a lot. Now, we are not suggesting here that all of these workings and Kelly's working are based purely on acts of fraud perpetuated, being stoned and completely out of their brains. Actually, I think that by smoking and by doing what they were doing, they channeled really demonic stuff. And they were definitely risking, because they were saying they were invoking angel entities, along with the assumption, though, that these were angelic messages. Instead, probably they were not. Now, the actions and effectiveness of drugs for in that period and in that respect cannot be downplayed. And a manuscript from Elias Ashmore, which is also the first recorded Freemason, by the way, so just, is a list of drugs probably written by John Dee. Unfortunately, this manuscript does not seem to have been reprinted anywhere. So, although it was photograph reproduction is available online, and we have it here. So I might want to show it, but probably they took it offline. I had the link, but they took it offline. So what happens is that the alchemists were very much interested in drugs, because you have to understand that when you're dealing with alchemy, when you're dealing with magic, you're dealing with the world of parallels. You're dealing with the world of not of a strict logic, but of an analogic. You know, you're playing by analogies. even the shaman, even the most primitive form of magic is made out of analogies. You know, you give to this object the power, or you identify it with the god, with the force, and that identification becomes analogy, and that analogy then can be brought to new heights when you are, of course, out of your ordinary state of consciousness. Now I have here some books there in Italian, but I have also The Great Priest by Timothy O'Leary, and this very old edition that my father had back in his library. I used to read it when I was a kid, and it's basically the experiences of people like Alan Ginsberg, William Burroughs, Aldous Huxley, that, by the way, like I explained in volume 8 of my Confessions, which I hope all of you have purchased, because it's definitely one of my greatest works, I explain how Aldous Huxley was initiated not only in the Golden Dawn, or basically what was, I think, the AA. I think erroneously they report the Golden Dawn, but I don't think it was the Golden Dawn. But in any case, Crowley initiated Aldous Huxley, that later on would become the head of MK Ultra, but he also initiated into the use of mescaline. Aleister Crowley was one of the people who more promoted all kinds of drugs and introduced all kinds of people to these drugs, including H.G. Wells, the guy who invented the word New World Order, probably one day after he smoked a big fat joint. But in any case, you see, drugs were not always illegal. Like, for example, Madame Blavatsky was writing books continuously, like chain smoking and smoking ash, because it was legal at her time. She didn't have any problem. When drugs became illegal in England, for example, there was the Drug Act of 1920. At that point, Aleister Crowley wrote a book in response to this prohibition, to this Dangerous Drugs Act of 1920, that criminalized for the first time the consumption of opium and cocaine. This book is called Diary of a Drug Friend. Fiend. Yeah, I always say friend, but in reality it's fiend. Now, it is basically a book he published in 1922, so in the period in which Crowley was in the Abbey of Thelema in Sicily. That is one of the most controversial periods, because in the Abbey of Thelema in Sicily, with his group of Illuminati, he experimented all the various drugs and all the various effects of these drugs. Crowley made a study of drugs and their effects upon the body and the mind, experimenting widely on himself. By the time he was already 23, he had experimented basically all the drugs possible and imaginable. Many of his conclusions are present in the Diary of a Drug Fiend that was published in 1922 in response to the Dangerous Drug Act of 1920. And many of his conclusions that we find encapsulate Crowley's core philosophy, of course, concerning Thelema and his conception of true will. However, this is not a book of magic like the others. This is it is a novel. So there is these two people fall in love, but they also fall in love not only with each other, but also with cocaine. And then they start doing so much cocaine, they end up selling their own big country estate. They go in a slum house in Greek Street in London. Then Louise, the wife, tries to summon her holy guardian angel. They do heroin. They try to kill themselves drinking prussic acid. It's a very it's like Crowley is not when it comes down to the use of drugs, he's not necessarily pushing them. He's actually showing the downfall and the dangers of them, even if he himself then later on became an heroin addict and died with a needle under his bed. So
do you think he got addicted from doing those experiments?
Absolutely. And in fact, there were some people who were thinking of sending him to Gurdjieff and Fontainebleau. Gurdjieff was this big, of course, other very big figure in the Illuminati, so he could maybe bring him out of this addiction so that he had gathered, but it was too late. And Gurdjieff couldn't be bothered. I mean, Look at the image of cocaine that Crowley had even put together. I mean, Crowley, if you, I mean, now I don't have the images of his Habia in Cephalou, because now it's completely destroyed. But inside there were these paintings in which there was like, drink cognac out of my satanic brain and do cocaine. That was, and then you had to meditate on these images. And Crowley was definitely a guy
who's repulsive
and wanted to try anything possible and imaginable, and that there is a happy land far, far away. And that is, you know, his need for basically embracing these drugs. And of course, this is dedicated, this passage, to the abuse of cocaine, but also the way that he was using it, and how he felt, and what kind of problems he had also to acquire, these drugs after they became prohibited. They had to be made by secret dealers. You had to basically risk. There was a risk that was outlined even by the unfortunate in Psychic Self-Defense. She talks about the fact that drugs, the use of drugs at that point is risky. But let's go back at this point, after having, of course, explained that drugs have been around for a long time in the culture of the initiates. The moment in which the Illuminati got in contact with the cannabis was not in France in 1840, or even at the time of John Dee, but much earlier, when the Knights Templars met the sect of the Assassins in the Middle East, Assassins, and they met this sect. They exchanged knowledge. They exchanged also, of course, knowledge about drugs. So, but at that point, the drugs came back to Europe, and sooner or later, somebody will start using them. And one of the people who made the use of it, of course, was John Dee, because he was very interested in the use of psychoactive substances to develop the visions of the angels, of the spirits that he was trying to connect with. In one account from John Dee's action with spirits, there is a lament about the lack of drugs for an operation. So, it was missing the drugs. We need the drugs. Here you're talking not about some guy at the corner road completely off on crystal meth. Here we're talking about John Dee, who had the biggest library in England, was the most cultured man in England, was the secret spy of the Queen herself, and the guy who signed himself for the first time, 007, and 007 was a stonehead. He lamented about the lack of drugs for an operation and the use of ointment in their place. So he had to substitute the use of drugs with something else. And he said, I have forgotten all my drugs behind me. I mean, that sounds like a drug addict, would say that, but that was John Dee. But since I know, quote, I am quoting John Dee here, so open quote John Dee. But since I know that some of you are well stored with sufficient ointments, I do intend to visit you only with their help. You see, all my boxes are empty. Edward Kelly was there. He showed a great bundle of empty Pottyshire, which was these boxes from the apothecary. So this brings a response from the figure that was, how come it that you pretend to come for a favor with diurnal power, all of your boxes are empty? So basically, he got a bad response from the spirit world. As Kelly had a reputation also, his channeler, as a bit of a con man and a swindler, one wonders if actually Kelly wanted the drugs and said, maybe, he kind of channeled in that way, because he said, the boxes are empty, I can't give you the information. So we don't know. This, though, was, of course, the word of John Dee. But we have said also there is other people who made use of certain substances, and there is a reference to cannabis and drugs also in the works of prior alchemists, even to John Dee. I'm talking about Paracelsus, the great Paracelsus from Switzerland, even Cardano and even Avicenna. We can be sure there is references to substances in magical operation. So Dee and Kelly likely shared the awareness to these alchemical recipes as well. But this was a situation in which then, you carry on this tradition, you transmit this tradition, you initiate other people, and in the end, it ended up in the hands of the modern Illuminati. And the modern Illuminati, just like the old ones, the first drug of choice, I repeat, is always cannabis. Even in the Magic of Abramelin the Mage, at the end of Magic, and it's a grimoire that is supposedly been written a very long time ago, it says that after you go through all these procedures that last 6 months, and you go in them, you will be left with a sort of curse, or let's say something that will always be there, and you will always require to smoke cannabis.
What?
That is basically something. But
so
now
you're like stuck smoking cannabis your whole life.
Well, what can you do? So, but why is that? Okay, now let's go back to when we opened the show and we talked about an Illuminati group called the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor. Now, an essential part of the initiation ceremony of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor seems to have been taking a pill that was sent along with instructions. Probably this contained a concentrated dose of hashish or opium to ensure a memorable experience to the candidate of the secret society. And the initiation ceremony, of course, the guy takes this thing and enters in communication with the entities of the interior circle. Now, when you go and study the text of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, you discover that their whole interior circle was a group of hidden initiates that secretly guide mankind smoking dope. Now, you will laugh about this. You say, ha, ha, ha. Some people will say, how can you rule mankind smoking dope? Well, why don't you ask Obama, Elon Musk, and a lot of other people?
No, thank you.
So I'm just directing you.
Joe Rogan.
Even Alex Jones. So we saw him smoking with Rogan and stuff. So the interior circle of the secret society, being a group of hidden initiates, was deriving their concept from Carl von Erkhausen, which is a very important figure because here we're talking about a German Catholic mystic, author, philosopher, born in Bavaria in 1752, died in 1803. He was the author of some very important books, especially one that the Illuminati regard as very important. It's called The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, the Die Woche über del Elitum. And this is a work of Christian mysticism, which was later taken up by occultists. And it was, this book became really important in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, particularly for Arthur Elder White, and is known to have attracted also Aleister Crowley, of course. Eckhardhausen later joined none other than the Order of the Illuminati. So the first asshole who comments on this video says, but the Illuminati, what they have to do with drugs? Well, yes, they have to do everything with drugs. And if you don't believe me, you can go directly on Eckhardhausen Wikipedia, and it says all this. So it's not like I'm revealing you the secret of the universe here. I'm simply trying to explain that drugs and secret societies in the context of the Illuminati, it's a reality. It's not a joke. Here, watch. this is carbon encounters. It is known to have attracted Aleister Crowley, and Countess later joined the order of the Illuminati founded by Adam Weishaupt, but withdrew his membership soon after discovering that this order only recognized alignment through human reason, and he was already starting to shift from human reason because he was anticipating the next century, the century which, like I said earlier in the show, saw the reaction to the Age of Reason and industrialism in people like Crowley and other people totally far out. So, there was this reaction. Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show. Leo and Christy Zagami. I'm not critical of cannabis. I think that cannabis can be a very beneficial drug. On the contrary of other drugs like cocaine, heroin, and other drugs, even worse ones that today bring to addiction and desperation people that are created out of labs, or even fentanyl and things that are monstrosities. The Illuminati know that cannabis can have beneficial properties. And at the same time, they know that with this drug, you might be able also to get in contact with another reality. So here we have a guy who was a friend of Abraham Lincoln. He was an Afro-American. He was the first guy who practiced sexual magic openly. I'm talking about Pascal Beverly Randolph. We talked about him in the past episodes of Exploring the Illuminati Occult. And if you want to find the whole series, just go on the Leo Zagami Show channel on YouTube. And of course, I think that you will be very interested in Pascal Beverly Randolph because he was the guy who inspired even Aleister Crowley, the guy who founded the first Rosicrucian order here in the United States was Pascal Beverly Randolph. Born in 1825, he would die in 1875. 1875 is a very important date because you have the death of Eliphas Levi, you have the birth of the Theosophical Society, you have the birth, unfortunately, of Aleister Crowley.
Oh, goodness.
A synchronicity, as Jung would say, and Jung also was very contrary to the profane use of drugs, Carl Gustav Jung. Now, when it comes to Pascal Beverly Randolph, he was a major importer of hashish into North America. Randolph came into contact with the herb in his adventures searching for occult knowledge. And he was also, as you know, an important figure in the spiritualist movement, organizing sciences. It is said probably even in the White House. So imagine this. Somebody might have smoked a big fat joint, and then he did the science with Abraham Lincoln and his wife in the White House. Whoa. I'm not talking about Obama and Michelle. I'm talking about Abraham Lincoln. So Randolph Randolph considered the use of cannabis products as part of a much older esoteric tradition. And he was also a mesmerist. He knew about electromagnetic forces and the animal magnetism theory of Franz Mesmer, the elixir that will perfectly restore the depleted vital fluids was known to be, at least in his eyes, the wine of life. Let's remember at times they mixed hashish, wine, things. Now, there is a citation that I would like Christy to read from Pascal Beverly Randolph, this one. Please, Christy.
There is no doubt that Confucius, Pythagoras, and his disciples, the alchemists, Hermeticists, Illuminati, and mystic brethren of all ages, used it to exalt them while making their researches for the Philosopher's Stone, secret of perpetual youth, and the elixir of life. So, Randolph, 1867.
So, in 1867, Pascal Beverly Randolph said, there is no doubt. Confucius, Pythagoras, the alchemists, the Hermetists, and the Illuminati, the mystic brethren, in search for perpetual...
I should have said it like that. The mystic brethren.
No, but
you're much better.
No, but it is important to understand now and outline here the fact that regarding of the theatrics of how you present it, these people really believe that this was somehow the medicine of immortality. A pure form of the drug was said to have been prepared by adepts in the East. There was a lot of mystery surrounding the hashish.
It's supposed to make you young. How is that?
Now, Randolph considered the plant to have both spiritual as well as medicine properties. And I think that the medicinal properties are quite known by this point. Randolph and his first wife, Mary Jane Randolph, patented a variety of cannabis based on, it was basically, he mixed it with stuff and he created this kind of aphrodisiac medicine. And it's like based as he creates this variety of cannabis based aphrodisiacs and medicine such as pinfil and amyl. And the difference he attributes on the effects leave one's wondering if he had stumbled upon the opposing effects of CBD and THC, which today are very well known. Now, this is, of course, Pascal Beverly Randolph, guys, an Illuminati. We're not talking about just a guy from the street who is selling dope. We're talking about Pascal Beverly Randolph, a 19th century Black American spiritualist, friend of Abraham Lincoln, Rosicrucian, and sex magician. John Patrick Devaney, in his wonderful book dedicated to Pascal Beverly Randolph, writes that at one point before the Civil War, he was probably the largest importer of hashish in the United States.
He was a drug lord.
Guys, Pascal Beverly Randolph was a drug lord. So the Illuminati already started being drug lords back then, you know, and then Aleister Crowley arrived and he was all over the spectrum and totally out of it and started to bring this drug around to all his acquaintances in the aristocracy, in the British aristocracy and stuff. And so in the end, it became kind of popular, no? So when they tell you that this whole thing was born in San Francisco, you know, and with the flower power and the streets of San Francisco filled up with people totally out of their brains, it's only partially true because Pascal Beverly Randolph was there earlier. So, you know, he was there 100 years earlier. You are following the Leo Zagami show with Leo and Christy Zagami. Today we are talking about secret societies and, of course, drugs. Very controversial topic. Now, he used to call his preparation made out of hashish the banner of light. Now, the incredible thing about this banner of light is that it was publicized also in the news, in the magazines of the time. And it was publicized like
ads in magazines?
Yeah. You know, he said, you know, in reply to the numerous correspondence, let me say that nearly all the hashish I bought with me from Europe and none other is fit to use is exhausted. The balance I would sell at $4 at bottle, with full directions on how to secure the celestial and avoid the ill fantasies. I have only 25 cases left out of 350, so that those who want the genuine Oriental article must send at once to Dr. P.B. Randolph, 17 Broomfield, St. Boston, Mass.
That sounds like baloney. He probably have more than that. He's just saying he's running out.
Well, he was definitely pioneering some selling techniques which we know are still in use to this day. Now, Randolph, you know, when it comes to the uses and abuses of hashish, what does Randolph say? He's quite, he's quite detailed about all this. So regarding hashish, his uses and abuses, he says, being the experience of the free soul during the illumination by means of this terrible drug, At times they describe it as terrible, but then they take it. That's the thing, you know. It's a little bit like Madame Blavatsky. She got so stoned and out of her mind until the later years, in which at that point she got some cancer and some problem, probably, you know. She was also chain smoker, from what I heard. And so in the end, she started to become also critical, though she had been very positive about hashish. And so let's see what Randolph says. The thrilling revelation of this pamphlet exceeds anything of this kind ever written. In details, the curious effects of hashish, and listen to this one. It's clairvoyance power. And what several souls learned under its weird and awful influence, how a soul lives 1,000 years in a moment of time where the hashish world is. So the fact that when you smoke, definitely you go out of it. But for the occultist, it becomes beneficial because it manages to, in some way, cut
they act like it's psychedelic. It's not.
It's a what?
A psychedelic.
No, let's say that, you know.
I mean, cannabis isn't a psychedelic.
But if using those quantities, in
like how much you have to smoke.
I mean, here we're talking about very concentrated quantities and mixed probably also. But I mean, remember also, we are here at the early stages. And there is a publication by Pascal Beverly Randolph, which is entitled Hashish, Its Uses, Abuses and Dangers, Its Ecstasia, Fantasia, and Illuminati. Okay? So, now we're going to read a little bit about this. So, the strangely powerful drug, says Pascal Beverly Randolph, is at one a curse and a blessing of mankind.
You want me to read it?
Okay.
But you have to make it big.
Okay.
Like big.
Okay. Let me see if I can make it. Is that big enough?
Yeah.
Bigger than that? I don't know. I mean, basically a pair of glasses are bigger than that. Okay. So.
Anyway, whatever. Medicinally, it is invaluable. I first learned of it in France, but in Egypt I studied it perfectly. Its effects upon our keener nerves and larger brain differs greatly from that upon the Orientals. Let it here be most distinctly understood that I do not approve of the use of hashish for aesthesia, fantasia, or clairvoyance anymore.
So he had basically, at this point, this is 1867, changed his mind, or was he simply covering up? Because we know what happens in these kind of circles. The initiatic use is one thing, the profane use is forbidden. Crowley was also very critical of people that do it for social purposes, and so they tend to discourage people, you see, Christine.
Okay.
Please.
And for the same reasons that I do not approve of alcoholic beverages, because pure liquors are hard to get, poisonous compounds abound, and just so it is with the hashish, it is difficult and expensive to get the right sort, and when had, great wisdom is required in its use. But being constantly importuned for information on this subject, and aware that thousands are using what purports to be hashish, and knowing these compounds or to be dangerous and deadly. You better read it.
No. The thing is this: that basically, is obviously promoting his own ash, you know. So he's saying that all the rest is dangerous, deadly, poisonous. But it could be, because let's remember that even to this day, if you go in Europe, you can find hashish which is cut with all kinds of things. I mean, in Italy, you could find ash that was cut with pieces of plastic, all kinds of things that were completely demented and probably dangerous and cancerogenous. So he has prepared, he says, this article upon its use, effects, antidotes, and true methods of exhibition. He says first that the ash is the gum of the Oriental hemp. This gum is called ganja. The various extracts of ganja are what is known under the generic term hashish. And further, he says there are about a dozen preparations of it under fanciful names, but only 3 are of any use at all. Those are to be carefully used if used at all in this pair, I should confine myself to the mention of those preparations, and and also he mentions that produce ecstasy and clairvoyance. So I don't really, you see, he's saying don't use it for ecstasy and clairvoyance, and then further down he says basically they produce ecstasy. So
maybe he smoked too much when he was writing this.
Well, like I said, he's also talking about the preparation of a genuine capsular ash, a capsule of it, to be had in this country pure of other forms. And he says that basically is the product of over 50 different extras that are possessing a little medicinal power and a great deal of anodyne, soporific, brain-maddening force, properties entirely distinct from those that produce either mental excitation or matter-penetrating vision. He knew exactly how hashish worked with this guy. This guy was like really serious. I mean, he went to all the Middle East. He smoked the best hashish in the Middle East, guys. And let me tell you, I live in California, but still to this day, you can't smoke what you smoke in Morocco or you smoke in other parts of the Middle East, because they really make it in a way that is incredible. Some companies here in California are trying to imitate, maybe people also, you have, for example, in Kashmir, you have black hashish, and that is really powerful stuff. And then you have, of course, Pascal Beverly-Rand, of course, about Turkish and Egyptian dova-meshk, which is a liquid or solid form, is used in various ways. And it goes on and on and on in the specifications of how the hashish candies so in vogue are also deadly poisons, and the results are insanity, idiocy, stupefaction. So he also warns about the use, at times of hashish candies, if they are probably, if eating them with candy, I guess, because that's...
Maybe they make a candy out of it.
And he says that could create also nymphomania. Now, I read some of these other instructions of the Illuminati of the who nymphomania. So that is the ash, So then you have Moroccan, but then you have also Kashmir. Like I said, you have the black ash in Kashmir. You have all kinds of ash which is produced in the world, and then of course there is the people who simply smoke the flower in the pure way. Now, going back to the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, because that is a group that has been very influential and has done a lot of work within the study of this and the consumption of it for initiatic use. Now, there is a report in a book, which is the only book, like I said, that talks about the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, is a book by Jocelyn Godwin, Christian Channel, and John P. Denevry. Now, in this book, there is a testimony from Reverend William Alexander Ayton regarding its initiation into the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor. Now, in his initiation into the group, Ayton was required to drink what purported to be the real soma juice drank at certain stage. So here they didn't give him a capsule, they gave him a juice. He said, I hesitated very much to drink this drug, and I thought of omitting it. However, he says, I opened the bottle, I smelled it. All my life I've been used to drugs, and I at once recognized this. I knew its effects were most powerful, but I decided to take it. This was the initiation by William Alexander Ayton in the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor. So he says, whether it was hallucination produced by this drug, I know not, but I was conscious of another presence.
I have a question.
Okay.
Did you take anything, when you did your initiations in the Illuminati, did you have to take anything? Well,
It happened. Yes, it happened.
I was just wondering because you're
Yes.
in the Illuminati, so
Yes, it happened. It happened that we also experimented all kinds of things within the Fraternity Rosicruciana Antigua, which I was the worshipper master of the lodge in London. And we used to have, for example, all kinds of experiments. Now, I don't want to go into all the details, but there was one. First of all, I want to make a preface to this because this must be very clear. I will not do the same thing today, okay? So what happened was this. There was the head of the OTO for the Secretary General of the OTO in England, Stephen Schofield. There was all these people, Freemasons, other people in this lodge, which was called the Aula Lucis Cagliostro. We all sat in the lodge. The works were open. You opened the works of the lodge. And at that point, we smoked this joint. And then I invited everybody to read the Bible without laughing. And this joint was not hashish, it was marijuana, and it pushed you very much into laughing because it was, and you had to be deadly serious in reading the Bible.
If you told me to be serious and then read something, I would laugh. It wouldn't matter what it was I was reading.
If you were stoned like that?
Probably.
Yeah, but that's the point. That's the discipline in the lodge, was that I was inviting people who were present at the workings of this lodge. And I remember there was Rob Curley from the Albion OTO, who then went on to become a student of Michael Staley and the Typhonian Order. So we smoked this joint, I remember, and there were all these brothers and sisters reunited in this lodge. And because it was a mixed lodge, the Fraternity Rosicruciana Antigua. And then at that point, we started reading the Bible. And I tell you guys that it was pretty...
Did anybody laugh? And did you kick them out when they laughed?
Well...
Did you have to, like, flog them?
No, because, you know, I would be, like, really there with a stick kind of thing. I mean, I was really harsh in my lodges, you know, I always been. But this was...
I'm glad I wasn't in your lodge, and I didn't have to take any drugs when I did my thing.
No, but that was, I mean, that was Freemason. Well, this wasn't Freemason. First of all, I encountered the use of hashish in Freemasonry only in the extractions of Arturo Reghini. Arturo Reghini with...
I remember him.
Yeah, with Frosini, was a member of the UR group, the Gruppo di UR, also with Julius Sevola. And they, I have here their books, their free books, the free volumes. They made also a specific chapter that was published eventually when the drugs became more acceptable in the 70s. And basically, it's about what they call the corrosive waters, which in alchemical terms is the use of drugs. And so, I mean, and there is also other kind of experiments that were conducted with drugs. And I'm not talking about marijuana or hashish. I'm talking about very much more powerful drugs. And here you're talking about mescaline. You're talking about acid. You're talking about drugs that are really powerful and that open the so-called doors of perception. That's why Adolf Huxley inspired then the Doors, the Jim Morrison with the name of their group, because then Aldous Huxley was a great manipulator, now being also involved with MK Ultra. He saw the potential of opening the doors of perception through a band that will play and push what is basically, because here there is something that Timothy Leary says that is reported also here in the back cover of this book by Timothy Leary, the great, the High Priest. The title, I think, in English of this book is so, because I always read it in Italian, but of course.
Hi.
The original High Priest is a High Priest, and it says basically that the greatest High Priest, authentic prophets of this great movement are the musicians of rock and roll. This is what Timothy Leary says. Now,
Definitely.
Huh?
Well, some of the songs you listen to from the 70s, like from Pink Floyd, he was really opening up doors because, I mean, some songs are really like, you listen to some
Jimmy
songs.
Page was OTO. Jimmy Page even rented the Boleskine on the rivers there of Loch Ness, of the lake there, and he made his rituals and stuff. And then, of course, you go to the staircase to heaven. Even if I don't know if it's really to heaven.
What did he have to do to get that?
I mean,
you always have to give something
he
really
has the
bad.
biggest collection of Aleister Crowley
His
paraphernalia and ritual. Jimmy Page is just incredible. I met him only once. He offered me dinner at the Abbey Road Studios. He was very kind.
Did you have dinner with him?
He offered me that. Well, it was like down at Abbey Road Studios, downstairs in the basement. You have like a sort of self-service for the musicians, and you know. And we all picked up all the famous music.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and then nobody was him. I was having dinner with my musicians, my guitarist and other people. And then at one point, one guy came from his table and said, we offer you the dinner.
That's nice.
And then we turned around and it was Jimmy Page.
That's really like unique and special.
Yeah, that was definitely a unique and special experience. So going forward, with the initiation in the Hermetic Order of the Brotherhood of Lux, right? Some people from the Hermetic Brotherhood of Lux ended up then in the Golden Dawn. Huh? So, but then you have to understand, not every secret society and not every Illuminati group was pushing drugs. There were also some groups that were trying to avoid the fact that these drugs might then become promoted and become not initiatic, but something just that could pollute the social level like it happened after, no? Mm-hmm. So, in this initiation, he said, this guy, William Alexander Hayton, is in a lodge of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Lux, and says, when I was fully 3 hours at it, from midnight. When over, I felt my pulse and found just what I expected, that I was intermittent, which was what I knew to be the effect of the drug I thought it was. The authors, of course, of this initiation knew exactly what kind of result it would bring in the mind of the candidate. When the drugs are used within this kind of Illuminati lodges, they know exactly what. You see, the OTO is actually in the lower degrees promoting, you know, they have this manual, this thing where they say the absolute is forbidden the use of drugs and everything. But then, you know, in the book of the law, you have Ivas who conveniently command Crowley and says, to worship me, take wine and strange drugs. Yeah. Be strong, oh man, lust enjoy all. So this is Aleister Crowley.
I hate having to hear about him all the time.
But he's the chief creepo. I mean, the one.
I never read any of his books. I never even opened any of his books.
That's
never.
good.
I just no interest. He's just really gross person.
And yeah, absolutely.
It's really disgusting.
Now, like we said, the fact that drugs have been always used in this context, and you have people like, you know, the French Romantics, Baudelaire, Gautier, de Nerval, and later Rimbaud. Now, Rimbaud they all belong to these hashish clubs of Dr. Moreau, the one at the Hotel Pimodon in Paris, which we showed earlier. They were interested in drugs like opium and laudanum for a scientific as well as aesthetic viewpoint, but their first love was always hashish and marijuana. Now, Arthur Rimbaud is a particular guy. He was deeply immersed in the occult from a very early age. I want to show you a pic of him because he's a very particular character. You can see really that, I mean, the guy was already out of it from a very early age.
Whoa.
I mean, this guy was like in the early 1800s parading hairstyle that was pretty adventurous. Let's say
But look at his eyes.
let's go and show to the public who we are talking about.
He looks stoned a little bit.
He probably was already stoned. I know, he was very young.
He's
but
a kid there.
I know,
Maybe they all had that look.
He probably started very young. I mean, these people, he didn't live long. He died very young. He was born in 1854. He died in 1891. So, I mean, he died very young. He was born in Charleville. He started writing at a very young age. He's a French poet who is very renewed for his transgressive, let's say, themes, very transgressive. Rimbaud completely stopped writing literature at age 20, assembling his last major work, which was called Illuminations. So at age 20, he was already accomplished. Rimbaud was a libertine, a restless soul, a guy who eventually will die of cancer after his 37th birthday. He was very much into the occult. In fact, one of his most important work is A Season in Hell, published in 1873. Le Saison en Enfer. So this guy was, with all the other ones, part of this club. And this club of really adventurous people who were dealing with these drugs, with an approach that was very methodic, scientific, academic, intellectual. They tried to control it. Earlier, I talked about also the hallucinogenic drugs in pre-Columbian Mesoamerican culture. I mean, we have to understand that Illuminati, when we consider the Illuminati to be something that goes back to Atlantis, to the ancient mystery schools, it's almost like these drugs were always present as a point of contact with the other dimensions. The Illuminatis of Thanateros are mentioned in my latest book, Volume 9. I talk about the Illuminati of Thanateros because William Burroughs became a member of them. They practice chaos magic. Lately, they have made a ritual to curse Vladimir Putin and support Zelensky. I talk about it in Volume 9 of my Confessions, which I invite you to purchase to support our show. Because, guys, watch me. You need to purchase our books to sustain the show. Okay. So at this point, you think I hypnotized them?
No.
No, but purchase the book. So here we are with really a situation in which you have initiates using drugs, but not for any other reason, if not to contact these entities that in some way form that can be, disembodied and never embodied. The fact that the neophyte of the order is basically getting initiated, first thing he does is being put through this experience that project them in what they consider are experiences in higher spiritualism. Well, it's definitely something that you have to understand was very attractive also for Alistair Crowley. So we can say that the modern version of the OTO that they have made acceptable by saying that they are against drugs and everything else, because I have their manual for, you remember, we even showed for the lodges, the oasis. It says you are absolutely forbidden. Okay. So once I was in this retreat in Norway with this OTO people. There was Lon Milo Duquette, there was Carl Abramson, there was everybody from all over the world, and we were in the middle of nowhere, 3 hours walk from the nearest road. So no chance to get picked up there. It was 2 o'clock at night. I wanted to absolutely smoke a joint. Now in Norway, in this cabins in the mountains, you have these toilets who have this hole that is projected in the
Yeah.
you know, those kind of
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
wood.
Yeah, like out in the woods and stuff.
Yeah, but
Like
it's a whole.
out?
It's yeah, but it's the seat even. It's just a
Yeah, it's
circle.
an outhouse, so like an outhouse.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, they're outhouses.
Yes. Okay. So what happens is this. It was 2 o'clock at night. I make myself. I go inside the toilet. I make a joint.
I never heard this story.
I make a joint, and suddenly, after I light it, I see coming in. I hear, and then I go under. You know, you have under. You can see there was somebody, and I recognize that it was the worshipful master of the lodge in Oslo. A bald guy like me. I think it was called Bjorn. I can't remember now. I think
Bjorn?
I think he was called Bjorn. I'm not sure.
That sounds about right.
But in any case, I was like, at that point, I was like, I'm gonna be busted here, you know. And I was actually more interested in really knowing what they were up to in these things in the mountain, in the middle of nowhere, than really. I mean, I was a member of the OTO, but I was, you know, I was curious. But at the same time, you know, I was somebody who liked to smoke a joint. Otherwise, I couldn't go to sleep. So I was like, I can start to blow the smoke inside the toilet. And
It didn't blow up, did it?
No, it did a hole there, you know.
No, you're like,
Hoping.
boom.
I
They put chemicals in that toilet. You should not
No,
be
it wasn't.
smoking
No,
in
it
there.
wasn't. No, it wasn't like chemical. It was just a hole in the mountain. It was very primitive. It was some kind of thing.
Okay.
No, so basically, I don't know. I think this guy, in some way, he saw me or heard me after or before or during. I don't know. I think.
Did you get kicked out after that?
No.
Did you have to sit-
No. I tell you, I had a little bit of a VIP status in OTO because I was a famous musician, this, that, and I was a Freemason and all that. So I kind of had a VIP status. But I tell you, for a moment, I was a little bit scared. So what I did the ritual of invisibility.
Say what?
Say what? The ritual of invisibility was used by
I
Crowley.
need that when I go outside.
No, the ritual of invisibility was once used by Crowley. Crowley did this ritual of invisibility and then went around with a turban and outlandish gear in the center of London. So nobody should have recognized him, and nobody did. Nobody said anything. Nobody even seen him, and he went around with this crazy, outrageous thing.
But did you see him?
Who?
The people. He was invisible?
He made himself invisible, and I used the same ritual to make myself invisible while I was smoking dope. While I was smoking this joint.
So you think you were invisible?
I don't know. I tried. I tried everything, guys. What can I do? I mean, I didn't want to be
That's
busted.
a good trick.
But it seems like an interesting thing.
I think you were.
Listen, there is
I think
different
you were-
experiments
I-
that I did following the Alice when I was in the OTO and the Illuminati and all that Crowley stuff. There was
Can I
another
tell a
experiment
story?
I did.
Can I tell a story?
Okay, tell me, please.
I want to tell a story.
Tell us.
Okay, I haven't done drugs since I was since 1980 something. It was like a long time ago. I was a kid. But when I was young, I was in the back of a Cadillac in Brooklyn. I told this story in my book, but I was in the back of a Cadillac, and I had never taken anything like that before. And then after that, I never took anything again. But I got past the mushroom and I ate it. And I had these, it was the 80s, so I had these big silver earrings on. And as soon as, the mushroom started to hit me.
Okay, you're talking drugs, but you're not talking about cannabis because we still
I know, but
cannabis.
I'm talking about magic mushrooms because that's all I have a story about.
Okay.
So then I smoked it, and after the I ate the mushrooms.
Smoke mushrooms.
Shut up! You're messing up my story.
Okay, but you can smoke mushrooms. Okay, go.
I know, I forgot.
No, so you did this. What was the effect of these mushrooms?
So anyway, when it hit me, my earrings flew off my ears. And they went in the sky, and they were silver. And I watched it fly away like a UFO. And then the Beastie Boys were playing No Sleep Till Brooklyn. And so it was like I listened to No Sleep Till Brooklyn, that like CD in like a loop. I felt like for like 24 hours looking for my earrings. It was the worst experience of my life. And from that moment on, I was like only 14, and I never did anything
psychedelic again. Okay,
never.
so you never did that.
I did not like that, and it was terrible.
No psychedelic drugs. Of course, then
your story's more interesting.
No, but this is an interesting story. But then you have also cocaine that was very popular in the 80s, but I don't think that cocaine is in any way an initiatic drug. Crowley considered doing cocaine within this context because he would do cocaine, then he would do the downer, he would do heroin, he would do the upper and the downer, and he would do then all kinds of mix, which today, of course, are quite known to clubbers and stuff. And then in the end, you end up completely, if you survive, by the way.
Don't do drugs. Drugs are bad.
I mean, I think that it's very important, though, that people understand that hashish can be a positive drug as well as marijuana. But other drugs, there is no way you can deal with opium. There's no way you can deal with crack, cocaine, and all those things, and no way you can deal with the modern drugs that have come on the market. However,
they're supposed to be like the fentanyl is supposed to be like so much more powerful than anything. Because I watched like I watched so many seasons of Intervention. Yes. I know all about drugs, and drugs are bad and they do terrible things, and especially nowadays because everything has fentanyl, and you even have to be careful like when you get like a sleeping pill, because my neighbor downstairs, he's not here anymore because he died of fentanyl poisoning. And he was a very nice man, but he couldn't sleep. And I used to hear him up at night, and he had terrible insomnia. So he got a sleeping pill from someone, because he was desperate. Because when you don't sleep, you get desperate, because when you lose your sleep, you lose everything. And anyway, he died like that, and it's just terrible. So
that was a really bad experience, because
he was a very nice man.
No, it was a bad experience for us, because after a few days we saw that his food was parked on his plastic bag.
No, it was terrible. I was there when they took the body out. It was really, really bad.
Well, we basically one guy said, "Did you see him?" And he said, "No, he has still his food that was carried to him on the Saturday."
He ordered food, and then he died, and his little dog was in there too. And it was just really, I was sad for like 2 years after that. That happened during the pandemic. So, I mean, fentanyl is really horrible, and it's killing so many kids. I know this isn't a show about drugs, but
no. We have to also make a distinction, of course. Here we're talking about certain drugs and secret societies. I don't think that anybody in their right mind would do certain drugs. What Crowley did was completely devastating for him. He died as an addict. He died with a syringe under his bed. And so, it was really a bad experience. Now, going back to the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, who made this use of the drug within their initiation. Now, their aim was communication with higher entities, including the spirits of the dead, and this was of central importance for the system. So they thought they could aid all this with drugs. And they approach this concept of theons, the concept of the ultimate goal for humanity, which was nothing less than obtaining physical immortality. Of course, these people never obtained physical immortality. However, in the astral, they definitely encountered entities. And they encountered entities that then often will stay on them. See, that's the problem. That's why then you need an exorcism. And I will advise people who had terrible prior drug experiences to cleanse themselves with an exorcism. I'm telling you this from a personal experience, guys. If you and I, during the magic of Abraham Elin, use certain drugs and stuff, and then you want to cleanse yourself even further. When I was cursed from, I was fighting these magical wars, and we had the subject of magical wars that we discussed here in the past episode of Exploring the Illuminati Occult. But also there is the magical wars that often occur between magicians, even within the Illuminati and the various secret societies of the Illuminati network. Exorcism, somebody says, is not the way. No, exorcism and prayer is completely the way to liberate yourself, because when you open certain chakras and you open certain gates with the use of drugs, you need to shut those gates. Now, I'm not talking by, my father was a psychiatrist who was specialized in recovering people who had lost it with LSD and other drugs. Wow. And people will bring him, rich, very rich people will bring their kids to my father, and within the matter of 1 to 2 hours, he will fix them for life. These were people who were suicidal, who were completely gone with their brains, because LSD, for example, seems like an innocent drug. Nowadays, they are even talking about using it again very much here in California, even not only as a recreational thing, but also for therapeutic use. But LSD can open the doors of perception, the doors of hell, the doors to those entities that once they latch onto you, you need to repel. So that's why I'm talking about exorcism. In the case of people who have done an abundant use of drugs, especially in certain surroundings. Like, guys, people think that going to Burning Man is a simple, innocent experience. They're smoking crack for real. In the sense that Burning Man has an egregore. Burning Man is full of drugs. You participate to Burning Man, and you participate to the wrong, maybe, show, music, and things. They do it all under the disguise of a show. But it is a ritual. You're evoking certain forces. You are opening and channeling these forces. LSD is something that you need to take if you have the keys. You have the knowledge to not get lost. Because you can get lost. And I saw people, I did LSD. My father did LSD. He was a guy who was actually one of the few researchers at the Sorbonne in Paris who experimented it on behalf of the groups that were organizing all those MK Ultra projects and experimentation. So basically, my father was experimenting. He taught me also the tricks with the serenase, the special substance they used to take, which I also take when I did it. If you don't overdose, you go simply too much LSD. It's very strong, and so you want to bring it down. There is a couple of ways. You can also bite a lemon, and that also comes a little bit down the situation. But in any case, you are dealing with something that is opening doors, something that is in some way able to make you travel freely in the astral and encounter certain entities. But if you're not ready to encounter those entities, I would suggest you stay away from what they used to call in the Hermetic Brotherhood of Lux, or the interior circle of the entities that belong to what they perceive as the celestial hierarchies, because most of the times they're not celestial at all. Most of the times you are dealing with demons that materialize in front of you. And so imagine this. One guy takes an LSD for social, recreational use. He doesn't have a clue. He starts behaving like an idiot. That's it. See? That was perfect. That was perfect to represent what can happen. And at that point, he suddenly sees something that will scare him for the rest of his life. And I saw people like that. I saw people like, you remember people? People
did a bad LSD trip?
Well, he was still under it. Didn't you see it?
That's what was wrong with him?
Of course. Or for example, people like, and I witnessed many cases like him, of people that simply maybe took an LSD and it went the wrong way in the 79, and the guy, I remember this guy was a great dancer on TV and stuff.
People?
No, another guy.
The other guy?
Yeah, another guy.
That guy?
Another guy who was always in Roviano.
Yeah, okay.
And he even, he was a dancer on TV and stuff. And, after 20 years, he was a fat guy who couldn't really connect socially. It was funny in a way, but it was also very.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but it was also very sad if you think about why he got to that stage.
Yeah.
He could have been, normal guy, a normal individual, but you see, you open the doors with. I'm making an example here with LSD, guys. It could be any form of drug, but if suddenly an entity materializes, a demon, whoa, and the guy is like, and that's it.
Oh, that's terrible. I'm getting Rambo.
Okay, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Drugs and secret societies. The Illuminati, of course, know everything about it. Madame Blavatsky consumed them, and Madame Blavatsky was the founder of the Theosophical Society. These days, the OTO, the Theosophical Society, various groups of Freemasons will always tell you, we never, drugs. We never hear anything about drugs. What are drugs? Today, we showed you the reality of drugs and secret societies. We show you how they have used these drugs to get in contact with what I call the invisible masters. And I hope that you appreciate our show, that you can continue supporting our show with donations and also with the purchase of our books. Send us also a pic like we showed at the beginning of the show, if you want, at our email address. And here we go with the dance macabre.
He has a blanket on because it's cold in here.
It's a little bit cold because there's air conditioning since I was doing the show earlier. Here we are, guys, with, of course... I have the computer is dancing, kind of like, I think the computer is on LSD. I mean, it's like the computer.
Where is the song?
Here we go.
Baby.
And then we have, of course, the brainwashing, the Carlos Castaneda, the hypothetical shaman who comes out of nowhere and initiates you to the use of peyote, ayahuasca, and you are there thinking you are finally going to be illuminated. Be careful, guys. Be very careful.
Everybody loves you. Everybody loves you.
You're number one, huh? That's it for today. Next week, another show of Exploring the Illuminati Occult with Leo and Christy Zagami.
Hi, everyone. Have a nice week.
Thanks to all those people who support us, who believe in us, who came to visit us, to celebrate and partake of a fantastic dinner yesterday. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Have a great week. And of course, this video is going to be in a few hours also on pan.video. Woo!
Bye, everyone.
What does Rambo say?
He wants to eat, I think.
He wants to eat?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to eat too.
You want to eat too?
I'm hungry.
Are you hungry?
I'm what is it? Hangry. I'm hangry.
Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. And from Palm Springs, California, that's all, and a little bit more next week.